Okay, Walter, bear with me for a moment. I think we are live. If anyone's listening, I'm just sharing that onto the event page right now. So, good morning. I'm Richard, and you will see my picture in just a moment before anyone comments. We are talking today with Walter Nand. So I'm, first of all, I'm from the Travel Industry Hub. We are a co-working meeting and event space in Sydney. And my co-founder is Luke Crawford, and we were planning internal events for travel and tourism within our space. And when we're bringing to our event, my apologies for the delay. I don't have an offsider because we all have to isolate. We're live on our page. And I now need to go in. Walter, while I'm doing this, I'm just sorry, I'm messing around a little bit. Could I just get you to introduce yourself to everyone, because they can see you and they can't, and they can see me currently, but I'm just about to share it to the event.
Okay, yeah, sure, no problem. Hi everyone. Richard said my name's Walter. I am one of the owners of Ride the World Motorcycle Tours. I've been in the travel industry for about 30 years. I've lived and worked in Fiji, New Zealand, England, and Canada before I moved to Sydney, Australia about 16 years ago. So that's where I currently live. Fortunately, I live close to the beach, so I'm able to get down and go for a walk, which helps clear my headspace. Travel and motorcycling, two of my biggest passions. So I'm very, very fortunate that along with David Reeves, my business partner, we've been able to combine my two passions and his two passions and open up Ride the World Motorcycle Tours. Our tours are on hold at the moment, of course, but we certainly are still enjoying building all the tours that we'll see for later this year and all of next year as well. I don't know what else you want to me to talk about, Richard. That's me in a nutshell.
So I'm not having much luck sharing this to the actual event itself. And although if we don't do that, then I'm just going to carry on talking. And all right, never mind. So as I mentioned, we're a co-working space, and that's one of the things we were doing is these live events, and this is one of those. But we've brought it a long way forward because of the current situation in the world. So if you'd like to know more about this, travelindustryhub.com, and we've also come together with Melissa Shembry of C&M Recruitment, and also Travel Daily and Travel Bulletin, and they are our partners with this, and I want to thank them for their input doing and promoting this for us, which is terrific. Now, also upcoming, so this is a serious conversation today, but and that's going to be things like your LinkedIn profile, some business sessions on a variety of subjects. For example, the latest government stimulus announcements, and that's changing day by day. So we're going to chat about those. Also, we've got to introduce some key people as well. So not everything's for everyone, and hopefully we'll find things that suit you. And if you have suggestions to make, then please email us at Richard at the Travel Industry at thetravelindustryhub.com, and those will come through to us, and we'll be able to utilize feedback to create more sessions. So thanks for the intro, Walter. We've done that a bit, almost said a bad word, but something about face there, but I appreciate you doing that. So Walter, if you don't know, Walter is one of the best known business development managers in the travel industry. And it's been said that if you don't know, you aren't networking well enough, because literally everyone knows Walter, and everyone loves Walter. And when I was thinking about this previously, I thought to myself, well, that could be a title of a TV show. I have an idea for. But jokes aside, everyone respects Walter and the work he does, and I want to just make that absolutely clear, because everyone you speak to has the same opinion of him. So he's currently the director of Ride the World Motorcycle Tours, as you know, and his previous roles have included Avalon Waterways, MSC Cruises, and APT. Do you want to speak about those just briefly, Walter, because there's a diverse audience and they don't all know what you've done and what you're doing?
For sure. Look, over the last 16 years, I've really specialized more in the cruising side of the travel industry, and specifically river cruising with APT and with Avalon Waterways. So aside from motorcycling, my other passion in the industry is cruising and river cruising specifically. I've been very, very fortunate in all of my roles to be able to travel around the state and the country and take familiarization trips overseas to experience a lot of the product. The travel industry that I've been part of for the last 30 years, I think, is just amazing. Obviously going through a bit of a hit at the moment, but we've been through not quite this level, but down times before, and we will bounce back.
Terrific. So you're always full of positivity and smiling. You're known for that. But you also have a story to tell, and it's something that when I've spoken to you over the last several months, I think it's something worth sharing with a wider audience. So on that note, Walter, it's worth everyone listening to. But I want, I'll give you 5 minutes. If we start losing viewers or I get bored, then I'm going to cut you off.
No problem. A couple of things that I just want to start off with saying is that I will be having a look at some notes. So if you see me looking down, just because I want to make sure I keep on track. And the other thing that I need to make very, very clear is that we're going to be talking about depression and talking some pretty stuff about suicide and so on as we go through today. I need you to all know that I am a trained counselor, but I am not a qualified health professional. So I can only really talk from my own experience and my own research, and I hope that that will be of some help to those that have tuned in today or those that will listen later on. I would encourage that if you go through this and it does hit some hot points for you, then please talk to your doctor. There are some resources available in Australia that we're very fortunate to be able to link in online with Lifeline. Beyond Blue is another one, and Black Dog, all online. And then you can contact these people to be able to help you if you are struggling. So having said that, I'll just tell you in 5 minutes or less, as Richard said, just a little bit about why men's mental health is important to me personally. Now, this does cut fairly close to the bone, so if I stammer a little bit, I just have to get through it, and I hope you'll bear with me on that. But I'll just start that and saying that, look, I've suffered from depression for most of my life. Now, I didn't know that growing up. There was no particular word that I knew for it. And I won't go into all the details of the abuse in the schoolyard, bullying and things like that. Except to say that I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody about any of it. So you just learn to cope, which is what I did. I just learned to cope and move on. Now, what this led to in my early teens is that I ended up having a very quick temper, and I became increasingly violent. I got to a point where I decided, well, I didn't want to live my life like this anymore. I did not like having these particular traits. So I learned how to control my temper, and I also learned how to control the violence. And this sounds really, really simple. All I did was I started to count to 10 before I reacted. Now, sometimes the most simplest things are also the most difficult. And what I found was that it took me some practice. I didn't always get it right, but over a period of, actually a fairly short period of time, as I started to employ this strategy of just counting to 10 before I reacted, I learned to control my temper and I learned to control my violence. Now, what this did was it helped me on the external, but it still didn't actually solve the black clouds and the dark thoughts. And the thoughts of suicide were present throughout that whole period. And even when life seemed to be going really well, I still had these thoughts that were lingering in the background. Now, when I started traveling, and that was in my very early 20s, because I was focusing on other things and I was always interested in the next city. This is the day before social media, by the way. So if I wanted to contact home, I had to write a postcard and I'll get it in a couple of months. So it was always the next exciting thing, speaking to people about what's going on. I didn't realize that all these dark clouds had actually lifted because I wasn't focused on it. They were gone. I was having an amazing life and I traveled all over the world. Now, when the dark clouds returned, it was not until many, many years later when I actually found myself on suicide watch in a lock-up ward in a psychiatric hospital in Canada.
Just repeat that. Sorry, after Canada,
yeah.
we lost you slightly. Could you just say that again?
Yeah, sure. The dark clouds returned for me when I found myself on suicide watch in a lock-up psychiatric ward in Canada. And this was just after September 11th. My new travel business was failing. My marriage was pretty much over at that point, and I was in a huge amount of debt. So all of this combined, to me, there only seemed to be one solution, and that was just to top myself. That was it, done. I don't have to deal with these issues anymore. Now, I don't know exactly what I said to the doctor at the time, but before I realized it, I was in a lockup ward. Now, one of the things that happened while I was there was that I had to actually attend group therapy. Now, here's an interesting thing that happened while I was there. When I was in group therapy, I suddenly realized that there were these people that I was engaged with that had much deeper issues than I had. And I also found that when I started to talk to them and made it my goal really was to cheer them up and to lift their clouds, it automatically lifted me as well. And my last group session that I attended was actually when the group had decided that I was just too happy to be with them anymore. And I think there's a bit of a certain irony to that. And the psychiatrist actually agreed, and I was released the next day. So it did give me that pause to be able to reflect and then move on. And I will just say at this stage that I'll be forever grateful to my partner Ingrid and my ex-wife Nadine, and also to my friends, particularly from the Down Under Club of Winnipeg, who came and visited me over that time, because it did give me the strength to carry on. Now, when I was released, problems were still there, of course. I still had my debt. I still had my business that was failing. I still had to deal with my ex-wife, even though we are still very, very good friends now. And all the way through, we still had to sort out those issues. But because I had the chance to put them into perspective, I was able to tackle them all one by one, and work through it. Now, since then, and during the time I have known quite a number of you that are on the call today, I've experienced several bouts of deep depression. Even sometimes when we've been out together, I've been in a deep depression and some days it gets so bad that I physically struggle to get off the couch. Even though my mind tells me that this is where I need to go, I need to do this work, I need to be out and about, physically just you can't move. Now, I suffer from clinical depression. A lot of you that are listening here will not have clinical depression, but at this particular point in time and over your life, you will feel really down and you will get to that point where you feel like you're depressed. There are tools and methods which we'll go through that can help you lift yourself out of that and move on. Now, for myself, being able to step back and take a deep breath has made me be able to move forward in a very positive manner. So what's happened over the last bunch of years is that I've learned to recognize all the symptoms, been able to reduce my stress levels, but the most important thing that I've done is I've actually focused on all the positive things in life and not the negative. I want to fast forward from my time in Canada and all the intervening years to just 2 years ago. I went on this amazing trip to Africa. My first time to Africa.
Walter,
sorry, mate.
What was the gap between Canada and 2 years ago?
Would be 14 years.
Okay.
Actually, probably 16 years because it was after I came out of lockup and everything, a couple of years before I left Canada.
Sure.
So, yeah, so about 16 years. So in that intervening time, I learned how to self-control it in a sense and focus on the positive things in life. And I very rarely look on the negative now. But yeah, so 2 years ago, I went on this trip to Africa. It was a dream trip. It was amazing. Now, as most of you all know, when you go to Africa, you need to take the anti-malaria medication. Now, unfortunately for me, I had a very negative reaction to that. And that wasn't a physical thing necessarily. It was a mental thing. Oh, it was the chemicals in my body that caused a mental reaction to it. So what happened was that when I came home to Sydney, I could hardly function. Each day for me was absolutely pointless. There was just this big cloud over my head. And it got to a point where I had just decided, enough's enough. It's time for me to go. Time for me to top myself. That's it. And I'm sick and tired of dealing with this. But something just in the back of my mind said, this has only just happened since Africa. So how about we start with the obvious thing first? Take yourself off the medication. So that's what I did. I just stopped the anti-malaria pills. There was all these rules about why you shouldn't do it. And I was like, well, you've got to weigh one option against the other. I will stop the medication. That seems the most logical thing right now. And within 2 days, this whole cloud, this whole heaviness had lifted. And I was able to focus once again on the positive, be out and about, be my happy, usual, jovial self. So what I learned in that is that target what sometimes is the most obvious. Do that first. And then we can look at other issues from there. Now, the other thing that I actually did around that time as well was I actually engaged with a psychologist. And I wanted to gain a deeper understanding of how my past was still affecting my future, even though I thought it didn't, but it was still affecting my future, my present, and will continue to affect my future if I didn't get some stuff sorted out. Now, for those of you that live in Australia, in case you're not aware, you are entitled to 5 free visits to a mental health professional. These are free through Medicare. You just need a referral from your doctor. So please, if you're feeling down even just a little bit, take advantage of that and go see a health professional and be able to talk through things.
Jump in, Walter. Hands up, I've done that, and it was well worth it at one point. So I'm sure there's many that have done a similar thing, but let's reiterate that.
Yeah, and it's so simple to do, isn't it?
Yeah, in Australia at least you are entitled to free visits to a mental health professional, and that's well worthwhile. Just briefly before I let you continue, if you are coming in a bit later, we're talking with Walter Nand. Walter is a really well-known business development manager and now director of Ride the World motorcycle tours within the travel industry here in Australia. Carry on, please, Walter. Thanks.
Thanks, mate. Now, over the years, I've known a number of people, both within the industry and outside of the travel industry, that have succumbed to what we call the black dog, which is depression. And when we say succumb, we mean commit suicide because of the depression. So when I talk about the black dog, that's what I'm referencing. Now, these people that I have personally known, they were all good, funny, intelligent, beautiful human beings. They just got to a situation where they couldn't see a way out. So that was a bit of an issue for me. And the other thing I realized, which was a bit startling, was that they were all men. I have not known, now you may know women that have committed suicide, I don't know any. So that was a bit startling for me, and which is why I have become quite passionate about talking about men's mental health. Now, I've also spoken to a number of other men who have actually survived the black dog. So one of the people that I want to highlight about this, and I have spoken to him and he's given me his permission to talk about this, is actually my business partner, David Reeves at Ride the World Motorcycle Tours. Now, David was going through a couple of cancer treatments. So first, he had to go through colon cancer. So he's got treatment for that. And then a little bit, well, within a year, he had to go through treatment for prostate cancer. Now, in between that, he lost his mum. Now he's an only child. So you can imagine with 2 quite major cancers and losing his mum, that became quite an issue. Now he's fully recovered from both cancers. But as a result of going through that period, where he had to go through to hospital and things like that, he also lost his contracts, which essentially means that he lost his livelihood. Now, some companies were really understanding, and others just essentially said, look, mate, if you can't do the job, the contract's ended, we'll find somebody else that can. Now, to add insult to injury, one of the major contracts that he did manage to hang on to and work for, and who were good to him, they were not a preferred product with most travel consortiums. So basically what this meant today was that it was every day, every sales call was just rejection after rejection after rejection at a time when he was already down, when he was already low and was getting towards the end of his run. But as David told me, the way that he saw himself through this period was to actually focus on the other people. So when he went into sales calls, his goal was to make the person in front of him laugh. What happened while he was doing this was that it lifted their spirits, but it also lifted his own as well. He also felt a sense of achievement by doing this. And by going through this process, which was not an easy process to start with, by managing to work his way through this, he was able to beat the black dog right back into his kennel. Now, one of the things I do have to say is that having David as a business partner is fantastic for me, because we will both check in with each other quite often to make sure that the other one is doing okay. And that's critical when you are feeling down, when you feel the chips are against you, is to check in with each other. So that's my somewhat abbreviated story, Richard.
First thing first, maybe I should have introduced David, because his story seems even more dramatic than yours. I thought yours was, but David, yeah, that he's your equal, isn't he? That I know David's listening. Hello, David, and wishing you the best. So there were some. You mentioned some other points, some lessons you've learned, and share those with us.
Sure. Look, there's two major takeouts that I've had over the last couple of years. And the first one is that what I have understood, particularly recently, is that it is still not okay to be not okay in the workplace.
It's just, well, hang on. Let's just slow that right down. Say that again.
Sure. There's been a lot of campaigns, and for those of us in Australia anyway, would have seen a huge campaign effort to say that it's okay to be not okay. And we have made great strides forwards and so much progress in mental health, and it's now being recognized as a real affliction. However, what I have seen over the past few years is that when someone acts out of character, they start not doing their work properly, something doesn't seem right, the workplaces are still not acknowledging that that person is not okay. Their actions are still being condemned, they're still being disciplined, rather than management finding out why they are acting out of character. Because if somebody is a really good worker and that's what they're known for, and then suddenly they're not doing their job as well as they used to, something's wrong. So we need to find out what that is. And if they're a good worker, you want to keep that person and you want to help them on their way. Now, I will give you a personal example of this. When I came back from Africa, as you know, I was in deep depression, so my work suffered. Now, I got to the point where, as I shared earlier, that I was seriously contemplating suicide. It was just not a matter of if I was going to, it was when and how. So I got called into the office because my work had suffered. Human Resources decided to give me a warning. Now, she didn't know what was going on in my head. I want to be clear about that. But in my personal opinion, she gets paid to find out why somebody's acting out of character. Now, I will say that my immediate bosses at the time are great people, and they knew that something wasn't quite right. But what would have been more helpful to me than a warning from HR was actually understanding, walking through it with my managers one-on-one, and being guided to go and see a health professional at that point, rather than me having to work through that on my own. So when I say that in the workplace, I believe it is still not okay to be not okay, that is what I'm talking about. We need a lot more education in this sphere to say that if you have a good worker and something is like they're not doing their job properly, discipline is not the first answer. There are other things we need to do.
Were you even asked, Walter, if
no.
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 Okay.
Now, in defence, that's me saying no, I wasn't. From their perspective, maybe they did ask the question, but I didn't hear it properly. But it was never followed. Like I sat there in one meeting and I got a warning. So that was, for me, that was like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, at that particular meeting, at that particular point in time, I actually didn't care about the warning because I was like, well, who gives a rat's ass? Because I'll be dead before the review comes up anyway. So
Sure.
that's where we don't want to get to. We want to have different meetings. We want to have different conversations. Now, the other point that really has come through quite strongly for me is that the strongest, most popular, most independent men are the ones that fall the hardest. Because when you're in a leadership position, or you're the popular person, or you're the fun person, you tend to keep all of your thoughts, or your real thoughts and your concerns, to yourself, because you don't want to break the illusion. You've created this image for yourself, and you want to portray that image, and you don't want others to see that there is a chink in your armor, that you're faltering in some way. So you don't want to show that weakness. So you just keep on doing what you're doing, even though you've got all this internal stuff going on. And oftentimes, those of us that fall into those categories, we are too proud to go and seek help. We also are too scared that we will be seen less of if we do go and seek help and somebody finds out. So those are the big things that I learned. Now, on the back of that, what I also saw when I attended various funerals is that when these strong men, or funny men, or whatever they are, commit suicide, everyone is shocked by their sudden departure because they were so outgoing, they were so strong, they were so motivated, and then suddenly they're dead, and by their own hand, and that comes as a bit of a shock to everybody. But in reality, it takes time to get to that point. So my vision at the moment is to really bring this message out to men, particularly the travel industry, because that's the sphere in which I work. Let's not get to that point. Let's work with different tools and different ways to be able to counter this and be strong, but also have the help that we need.
Sure. Okay. I'll let you go over your 5 minutes because it was interesting. Thank you for that. So we're going to move on. Your experience is outweighs mine and most people's. What's your your advice on how people can get on the front foot at this time? Because there's people under pressure. There's people running businesses. And we're not just focused on men, but I expect a lot of this is particularly relevant to men in the positions, some of them that they hold. What's your advice on how to get on the front foot and during this time?
Yeah, sure. And I'll just want to preface this by saying that, look, I've been called Pollyanna, or someone who doesn't live in the real world. And I can understand why people think that way about me, because for the most part, I am very lighthearted, very quick to laugh, always looking for the positive in everything. However, as I shared earlier, I've experienced child abuse. I've had marriage collapses. I've business collapse. I live with chronic, ongoing, but sometimes chronic pain. So I can assure everybody that I know the negatives that the world can throw at us. Now, the reason I tend to be so upbeat most of the time is because I choose to look at the positive and not dwell on the negative. Now, as my partner will tell you, I'm certainly not superhuman. And as my daughter will tell you, I'm sure as heck not that special. So if I can do it, then I know everyone else can. So there's a couple of things that I use as coping strategies, and I'll go through those. I will be looking at my notes as I go through this. The first one is understand and honestly acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. Now, one of the things you can't stop is you cannot stop a thought entering your head. You cannot stop a feeling from entering into your body. They just appear. If you try to dismiss it, it doesn't matter, but it's already there. So the same with thoughts and feelings. You can't control when these things happen. What you can control is how you decide to deal with these thoughts and these feelings. So when you start thinking or feeling negative about something or someone, catch yourself and ask how you can turn this negative into an advantage or into a positive. Now, that sounds a little bit airy-fairy, and as I was thinking through this in my own head, it sounds a little bit pie in the sky, but I can assure you from my own experience that you can absolutely do this, and it is like any other tool. It takes patience, it takes practice, and it takes persistence.
Just to cut in, I covered a session a couple of days ago with Vara Glover, who's a psych, and that allows you to drink your water because I'll ask you to talk a lot. But Vara was talking about some techniques around this. So if anyone's listening and is interested in more, go back and look at the live session 3 that did cover that, and we'll be doing more on that respect. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, that was a great session. Vara, I think, does a great job. So the other things that we can have a look at is focus on what you can control. Now, one of the things we do need to understand is that we cannot control everything. We can't control others. We can't control external forces. What we can control is how we respond and how we act to those external forces that come upon us. Fourthly, I'd like to say talk. Talk to your partner, talk to your friend, talk to a colleague, talk to a health professional. It's amazing what happens when you just talk about things. You let this out. Now, you can think you have this internal dialogue going through your head that is talking it out. It is absolutely not. And if you want just a simple way to practice this, read a book, just read a paragraph in a book, read it in your head, then read that out loud. That's the difference. So when you go through this process, just verbalizing it helps take the edge off. The person that you're talking to doesn't have to have a solution. It's just a matter of talking this out and having somebody there to listen to you. And that brings me to the 5th point, which is talk to a professional. As I said earlier, in Australia, we're very fortunate that we do have those 5 free visits to a mental health professional every year if we choose to use that. You just need a doctor's referral. So I really do encourage you to take advantage of that, particularly at this time.
Sure. Also want to ask if in a situation where it might be your partner who's struggling, or you might be identifying that and arguing or whatever, however that manifests itself. What about if that's a male partner?
Yep, that's a really good question, Richard. Because of course, I'm not alone in this because Ingrid has had to live with me for the last 16, 17 years. The first thing is, if you have a male partner and you know that they're kind of out of kilter, they're not just not quite right, ask them if they're okay. Now, I will tell you that any male will almost always say yes, they're fine. They'll put that away. But ask the question anyway, and just offhandedly say, look, if you need to have a chat, just let me know. Don't push it. Just say, look, are you okay? No, yeah, I'm fine. All right. Well, if you need to talk, just let me know. So keep it very, very casual. And understand that they may not be honest with you because they will be convincing themselves that they need to protect you and to carry the children, the pets, whatever it is. They have to carry this whole burden alone, and they will feel the enormity of that. So just be aware of that part of it. That they may not be honest with you, but ask a question.
In there, sorry.
Yeah.
That burden that men feel of being the provider, of being the head of the household. Now, okay, that's. But certainly people of our age grew up in that environment. Would you say it's still as prevalent as it used to be amongst many people?
I don't believe that it is as prevalent as it used to be when men had nowhere to turn to. Nowadays, we have a lot of tools at our disposal. However, we still do have that male machoism. And as we've talked about, throughout this conversation, that we will keep this bottled up inside us. And sometimes we don't even acknowledge the fact that we're trying to protect those around us. It's just that we're trying to shield them from what's going on, even if it's just internally within our own minds. So yeah, I think unfortunately, great men are still killing themselves because of this reason. So yeah, absolutely, it's still pertinent today. The other The other point that I would say to, if you're talking about your partner and you want to know what to do with your partner, for goodness sake, whatever you do not tell them to snap out of it. Because if they could snap out of it, they would. And there's this thing that we used to call tough love. It doesn't work if somebody's in depression. All that happens is it adds to their burden that they are worthless and they can't pull themselves out of it. So don't tell them to snap out of it, because, as I said, they would if they could. Instead, suggest different positive activities like taking a walk. Now, don't just say, hey, look, I think you need to go for a walk. Ask them to do it for you. Say, look, I really want to go for a walk. Would you mind coming along with me? Because guys are pretty simple creatures, really. We won't go for a walk for our own health. But if it's important to you, sure, I'll come and support you on a walk. What that does is it gets the person up and moving, gets them out of the house, challenging at the moment, but gets them out of the house. And just going for a small walk in the fresh air makes the world of difference, because it changes the situation. So again, don't say, hey, you need to go for a walk, let's go for a walk. They're not a dog. Just say, look, I really need to get some fresh air. I'd love your company. Would you mind coming with me? It means a lot to me, and that'll make a big difference. And the final thing that I would say on this topic is get some help for yourself. You can't do this by yourself. You are entitled to those 5 sessions with the health professional. So speak to your doctor and get those sessions for yourself. Seek help and get some guidance on that on a professional level.
To clarify, that's help for the person who's helping.
Correct. Yeah. So if you feel like your partner is going down a bit of a dangerous path, get some help for yourself first and get some guidance through a health professional.
Sure. Moving on to the situation the world's facing, and particularly our industry is facing right now. What do you suggest to people right now?
Look, I've given this a lot of thought, Richard, and just so everybody who's listening knows, these are steps I've taken myself. So I'm not just talking rhetoric here. These are really practical measures. The first one that I will say is limit social media. And I really can't stress this enough. Almost everything we see on our news feed, on the social feeds, it's all negative. And what that does is that spins us into a downward spiral. Lots and lots of funny memes about COVID-19, and some of them, I've got to say, are just absolutely hilarious. But what that does, even though it's funny, it reinforces in the back of our mind that we've got this major catastrophe going on. So limit your social media. One of the things, one of the things that I do now is I switch off all social media for at least an hour at a time. Now that's not an hour per day; that's an hour block, and then I'll come out and I'll do some stuff because I'm still working with Ride the World, and I need the social media stuff. But then I'll take another hour and I'll block that out completely, because then I'm not constantly bombarded with all the negativity. The second thing is switch off the news and all social media well before bedtime. Focus on a book, watch a movie that has nothing to do with COVID-19. For God's sake, don't watch Contagion or something like that. Watch something positive. Read a positive book that transforms you to somewhere else. You can't influence what will happen while you're sleeping. The world will carry on, and when you wake up tomorrow, you can address that. So put your mind in a positive space before bed and make sure that you go on that level, and you'll wake up and you'll feel much more refreshed. Now, this next one is really, really hard to do. And that is, when you wake up in the morning, do not turn on your social media immediately. Get up, have a shower, get changed, have breakfast, sort out your day, and then go on social media. Again, you can't control in that hour that it takes you to do all of that. Nothing major would have happened that you can't deal with an hour later. So once you've got yourself into a good headspace in the morning, talk to your family, be in good spirits, and then log into social media and get the updates that everyone's looking for. The other thing that we do is plan. One of the easiest things to do is just to slip into holiday mode and just go day by day. The only difference is that for the most part, you can't go out. We're not going to the swimming pool. We're not going to the gym. We're not doing these things. So plan your day, plan your week. We've got a 10-year-old at home now, and she'll be home for the next month. So what we've had to do is sit down and work out a plan. What are we going to do every day? How's she going to get her schooling? What am I going to do? What is Ingrid going to do? She's working from home as well. What does this mean? Structure the days and set it up as if you would structure a day at work, and then be creative with it. So look for different opportunities to engage your mind. Now, if you've lost your job, and I know some of you on this call have lost your job recently, or at least been stood down, the one thing that I really, really want to stress, and I know that I've spoken to a number of people over this last week, is that this shutdown is only temporary. The travel industry, it will rebound, and the companies will start hiring again. Now, that could be in 3 weeks' time, could be a month's time, 6 weeks' time. We're not quite sure that time frame, but it will happen. So what we can utilize this time now is to refocus, have a think about what it is you would actually like to do when the market comes back. What job would you ideally like to have? And what can you do between now and then to work on that and get you to that point? Update your CV. Have a chat to Melissa at CNM Recruitment, because I know that she's in connection with the travel industry. Have a great resource there. She'll be able to help you on this side of it. And if you can, upskill your knowledge. Lots of free online tutorials. For those of us in the travel industry, there is no end to online learning that we can do for free. If you are in the cruise space like I am, on a different side of things, then contact Clear, CLIA, for those of you that are familiar with Clear Australasia. Contact Clear, join them. Lots of cruise content that you can learn while we're in this downtime, so that when we come back, then we are more knowledgeable and we're stronger and ready for the rebound.
We're planning to talk about training, and I'm going to speak to TAFE New South Wales for some recommendations on and that's applicable to everyone all over the place, but what kind of courses are available and what are most suitable at this time. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's awesome, mate. There are a lot of tools available. It's just knowing where to get them. The other thing that, two more things. So one is when you're talking to other people, make sure that you are being positive. It's easy to get into this negative spiral, and all that does is add doom and gloom. But look for the fun things that you have in common. And when you're talking to them, whether it's on the phone or whether you're FaceTiming, whatever it is, have in the back of your mind, how can you make their day better? Remember that they are usually in a fairly similar situation to you. So how can you make their day better? When you do that, you will see them lift, and that will lift you as well. And the final thing that I would say that while we're going through this particular challenging time is make sure that you treat your partner like you would treat your work wife or your favorite colleague. Because remember, they're stuck in the situation too. They could be just as anxious or even more anxious than you. And one of the easiest things to do when we're stuck at home is focus on ourselves. Focus externally. Make sure that the life that your partner, and if you have kids, animals, whatever it is, that you are lifting their spirits up as well, because that will help you lift your own spirits.
Got a question. Phil Hancock says, Walt, do you have any advice on how to raise mental health issues with your employer, not only to get their support and empathy, but also protect your employment rights?
That's a really good question.
You are allowed to answer this in writing later on if you're not on the comments, but to spring that one on you, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the thing is to actually have that frank conversation. Most, from my personal experience, a lot of people that I've spoken to, their bosses and even their HR departments are not equipped enough to deal with this conversation. They don't quite know what to do with it. But if you bring it up and say, look, I'm having some real issues here, now is the perfect time, because everyone's scared. And we all have these issues that are going on. So just speak to your HR department, speak to your immediate manager, and just say, look, we need to address this issue. What can we do? What tools can we put in place that we can actually change the culture of our environment here for the positive?
So I know that we've talked about HR departments and type of thing. I also want to mention that you have an interest in doing something for International Men's Health Week and International Men's Health Day. So I'm going to bring some details up on the screen on that in a moment with some dates. But what can we do? Where can this go to? What kind of event do you think we can hold, and what could it achieve?
Yeah, for sure. And now David and I have been talking a lot with you, obviously Richard and Luke at Travel Industry Hub about this a little bit. International Men's Health Week is from the 10th to 16th of June. Now, in reality, this year we won't be doing anything on a face-to-face practical level that we can organise in a short space of time. So Richard will have a chat later and see what else we can do over that week for this year. Next year, moving forward, David and I have got a few ideas based around a motorcycle touring thing as well during that week as well. But what I really would like to focus on for this year is on the 19th of November is International Men's Health Day. And we'd like to really have a function based on men's health and really bring this to the forefront.
Sure. I'm just showing everyone currently those dates, and that's probably enough of that. So I shall sharing that and come back to my wonderful face, which I'm sure will excite everyone. So let's, coming towards the end, let's talk about Ride the World, your current situation now. Of course, that times are tough, but where do you envision this going to, and on what scale?
Well, look, we're very fortunate at Ride the World because we were just really starting up and launching. And the few people that we did have on rides have already come back. So we've just taken a pause. We're not taking any new bookings at the moment. But what we are doing is utilizing this time to really solidly build our platform. And when we come back in the next few weeks, we'll be in a much stronger position, actually, than we are now. At the moment, we have more than 250 tours operating in 9 different countries. We work with exceptionally quality operators in these countries. So what we're looking for is really just getting people out, seeing the world differently from a motorcycle is quite different to going on a normal tour. The other thing that we really are working on, and we are trying to include, are the non-riding partners of motorcyclists. So if you're a motorcyclist and you have a partner that doesn't ride, we have pillion options, but we also have seat and van options. So you can actually have the same holiday. The rider goes off and we do our ride. The partner can hop in the van and do a slightly different tour, but we all come back to the same place in the evening. So some very, very exciting things that we'll be doing worldwide as we move forward.
Terrific. So we're going to end with some closing words from you, but I do want to give you my sincere thanks for taking this time and just your candor and honesty in what you've said to us, and I hope it starts a conversation at least. Any final things?
I'll just say to everyone listening, just know that if you are feeling anxious, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling down, that you do have a lot of support. Not only for the likes of people like me or the Travel Industry Hub, but from your friends, from your colleagues, who at the moment are all in the same boat. So again, talking positively will help. Seek help from professionals if you need it. But I've been saying to pretty much everyone over the last 10 days, Richard, I'm so looking forward to having a beer, or maybe 10, when we can all get together at the Travel Industry Hub when this is all over.
So alcohol is the answer, is that what you're saying?
Alcohol's the answer at the end, mate. Alcohol's not the answer on the way through.
All right. So thanks very much, mate. If anyone would like to contact us, I'm Richard at thetravelindustryhub.com. I'm also available on LinkedIn. Walter, give us everyone your email address.
It's Walter at rtwmotorcycletours.com.
Around the world.
RTW, Ride the World, motorcycletours.com.
Okay, I just want to again give a big thanks to Travel Daily and Travel Bulletin for their support, and Melissa Shembry of CNM Recruitment, and to everyone working behind the scenes. That's Lisa and Anya from Inspired Plus, my co-founder Luke Crawford, and our interns Jessica Nutt and Declan Trifunovic, who are doing some awesome things. They've joined us at a very strange time for an intern to be working with a company, and we're going to do a little profile on them because I tell you what, they're great. So for more, follow up our Facebook page. Hopefully you already do. And this full schedule is going to be on our website, which is www.thetravelindustryhub.com. That's it. Thanks very much, Walter.
My pleasure. Thanks, Richard.
I'm going to end this here. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.
See ya.
Cheers.